In this video, we're going to cover custom post types and custom taxonomies. I'll give you a brief description of what they are, then walk you through a few ways to create them, both with and without plugins. And finally, we'll add the custom post type to our child theme so that it's portable and doesn't live only on the finished website. So first, what is a custom post type? Well, if you remember, in WordPress, everything is pretty much a post type. So the default post types are going to be our posts, pages, attachments, revisions, navigation menus, block templates, template parts. All these things are default post types. And most of the data that we work with in WordPress is created as a post type. Custom post types are post types that you can create on your own. And the reason why you would use these is when you generally need to group and query similar information that should be kept separate from other collections of information inside of WordPress. We can create a decision tree of whether to use built-in posts, pages, categories, and tags, or whether we should create a custom post type or custom taxonomy, but that kind of goes beyond the scope of this video. And I think that's something that I will try to cover in a separate, much larger video. If you look on this page, it says that you generally should not use custom post types inside your theme, and that generally is going to be the case. The reason is because WordPress wants the theme to only have the general look and feel of the website, and any functionality should go into a plugin. So if we wanted to do this 100% the WordPress way, we would actually create a custom plugin to hold our custom post type. But in this case, we're going to put the custom post type and custom taxonomy inside of our child theme. And the reason is because the way that we've been structuring this series is that we've got a master theme that has all this general look and feel, and then we're customizing specific websites for either clients or projects and putting those in a child theme. So that really reduces the risk of needing to change out themes later and losing functionality. But again, if you're doing this 100% the WordPress way, you should create a custom plugin to contain these custom post types and really any other functionality that you're going to add. Sometimes people get confused about the difference between a custom post type, a custom taxonomy, tags, and fields. So I wanted to do a little bit of a demonstration here to give you an example of a very simple time when we might want to add a custom post type. In this example, we have a fictitious law firm or other professional services firm, and they want to show an employee directory on their website. That employee directory is going to have some things like, where the employee is located, what department they are, job titles, skills, qualifications, email address, biography, things like that. So where do we store all this? Now we could create blog posts and enter all this information individually, but then it makes it very hard to query and it makes it very hard to reuse those kind of things. So instead, we might want to create a custom post type of employees that's going to hold all that data. And then we need to think about what are the different things that are going to be queried, what are the things that need to be grouped or possibly going to be repetitive. And from there, we decide where we want to store that information. As a general rule, if I'm going to display the same piece of information in more than one place on the website, so for example, maybe I want an employee grid, and then once I click on that employee inside the grid, it takes them to an employee bio page. If I've got that, again, I don't want to duplicate information, so I need to store that somehow in the database so that it can be referenced. So for this example, we started off with that employee custom post type, and then I created taxonomies for job titles because those are things that are going to get repeated among different employees, office locations, and departments. Now, if you notice, each employee has one and only one of the things that are in each of these taxonomies. So an employee is going to have only one department, only one office location, only one job title. That's going to be one of the big differences between how we can use taxonomies and how we would use tags. For tags, we would probably want multiple tags for each employee. So each employee is going to have several skills, several qualifications, lots of experience, and different kinds of awards. By grouping them this way, we can make sure that the employee gets multiple things that are here in the tags, a single thing that's here in the taxonomy, and then the custom fields are things that are going to be specific to only that one employee, but things that we still want to be queryable. So things like email address, phone number, biography, photograph, those aren't going to be repeated for different employees, but we want to have them queryable so that we can show them on the employee grid as well as the employee bio page. Now that was a really simple example, but here's a much more complicated example. And this might be for a college website where we would have things like students and degree programs and courses and teachers, all these different things that need to be referenced and cross-referenced and are going to have all sorts of different relationships. So again, this is a very simplified example for a college, but it does give you an idea of how things might need to be grouped and just how complicated this all can get. Now, one thing I want to mention is that even though we're talking about custom post types, custom taxonomies, tags, and custom fields inside this video, they really are all separate concepts. Custom post types and custom taxonomies are very related, and they're something when you create a custom post type, you're almost always going to be creating a custom taxonomy. And the way you go about creating them is very similar, so I'm grouping them together in this video. Custom fields is a little bit different, and although WordPress does have support for custom fields built in, it isn't handled quite the same way, and in practice, you're probably going to want to use a plugin like ACF or MetaBox to manage them. And tags we're not really covering at all, I just wanted to put it in here for illustrative purposes. So how do you go about adding a custom post type or a custom taxonomy inside of WordPress? If we look inside the WordPress Developer Handbook, we can see that there are functions with lots of parameters that we can use to create them. This really isn't going to be the most efficient way though, because it's a lot to remember. So instead, most people go about doing this either by using an online generator or a plugin. I'm going to show you the online generators first because in my opinion, it's the better way to go. And then I'll show plugins later because that's the way that a lot of people tend to do them. But either way, whether you're using an online generator or a plugin to create those custom post types and custom taxonomies, you still need a place to put them. Now, a lot of people are going to use a plugin and just leave that code directly inside the website that they're building. And that's certainly one way to do it. But as I mentioned before, you probably want to put that inside of your child theme or a custom plugin so that it can be a little bit more portable. There are lots of online generators that create functions for all sorts of things that you can do with WordPress. One of the really popular ones is Generate WP, and this one's got a lot of great features. WP Hasty also has really good generators, and one of the nice things about this is that you can see the code updating in real time as you're doing it. And WP Turbo is one of the newer ones on the market, and I think it works really well, so this is the one that we're going to be using for our demonstrations. And lastly, we have a company called MetaBox, and they actually make a custom field product that does a lot of stuff, but on their website, they've got custom post type generators and custom taxonomy generators. On the plugin side, Custom Post Type UI or CPT UI is definitely one of the most popular products out there. This has got a ton of features. It lets you customize almost everything, and it does a great job of importing and exporting the code that you need for your custom post types. Advanced Custom Fields, up until recently, did not create custom post types and custom taxonomies, and you would have to generally use it in conjunction with CPT UI, but now they built the functionality in to do them. It's still a little bit rudimentary, and I definitely don't recommend using it over something like an online generator or CPT UI if you need a lot of power, but if you just need to whip something up quick and dirty, this works just fine. And lastly, if you ever need to reference the code or the specific functions to create these post types and custom taxonomies, you can always go to the WordPress Developer Handbook. And the functions that you're looking for are going to be register post type and register taxonomy. Now let's quickly go through these generators so I can give you a feel for what they do, and then we'll walk through one step by step. Let's start here with Generate WP. And here we have a lot of tabs with a lot of different information that we need to fill out. So it makes it a little bit cumbersome to work with. Once you've gone through each one of these and you're ready and you think you have everything the way that you want it, you click this Update Code button, and it gives you the code down below that you can copy and paste. This is one of the oldest generators out there, so the interface isn't quite as intuitive as some of the new ones. WP Hasty looks very cluttered, but once you use it, you'll realize why, and it works great. As you're entering information in each one of these, the code over on the right-hand side updates in real time. So for example, if I wanted to add an excerpt to this custom post type, we could see that it added it right there. I don't need to click any buttons to generate code, it just does it. The problem with this is that a lot of things are locked behind their Pro tier. So for example, if I want to add a taxonomy to this, I need to upgrade to Pro. So that made it kind of a non-starter for me. The MetaBox website also has an online generator. It's very similar to the one on Generate WP, except I think the interface looks a little bit nicer. But again, you need to generate the code and then come down below and copy it. For this actual demo though, I'm going to use WP Turbo, and we're going to walk through step by step how to create this employee custom post type. So one of the first things that I want to do is give it a function name. We don't want to leave it as the default WP Turbo register my custom post type because we want to give this a meaningful name that actually talks about the post type that we're creating. So instead, I'm going to call it BTFS child register employees. The text domain is generally going to be optional, but it's a good idea to put this in, and we're going to call this BTFS child. And this is mainly going to be used for translation. And you can see as I put these in, the code's updating in real time down below. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is come over to the post type section, and our post type key is going to be employees. My description is just going to be employees of the BTFS Music Studio. The singular name for my custom post type, and this is what shows up in the WordPress admin dashboard, that's going to be employee. And then it's automatically going to populate the plural name for me of employees, but I can change this if I need to. By default, custom post types are going to work as posts, but if we want them to act like pages and be hierarchical, we can check this, but I'm going to leave it unchecked. Labels, this is probably the biggest reason why people use these generators is because we need to add attributes for each of these different labels, and it's a pain in the butt to do this every time you create a custom post type. So the generators do a great job of taking the singular name and plural name and pre-populating all these labels for us. Under supports, this is what we want to add support for inside the editor. So title and content, those are pretty standard. Here I also want to add support for a featured image. Under taxonomy keys, this is where once we create the taxonomy, we would put the key in there so that the custom post type knows to use the certain taxonomy. Now I already know that I'm going to later create a taxonomy for departments, and I'm going to use the key of departments in here. So let's just type it in and get it over with now. For visibility, we can generally leave this as is. And again, if you have questions about what any of these do, you can always look at the information here, or you can go back to the developer handbook and get a little bit more information about what each of these does. I do want to change my admin menu icon, and I want to make this dash icons groups. Now under query, here I do want to enable archives, and I want to enable export because I want an archive for this. I want to be able to go to the employees page and have a list of employees, just like we would go to the blog page and have a list of all the blog posts. For permalinks, I'll leave all this as the default. We're not going to do any custom capability, although here if I was creating custom roles and doing all that, I could add them in here. REST API, we're going to show it in the REST API. We're not going to change anything else. They've got some examples and of course a share button. Now that we've set all of our settings, we could do this. We could say download as a plugin and install that plugin. And this is great because it is, again, the WordPress way of doing things. But for our purposes, we're just going to copy this to the clipboard for right now. We'll come back to our production website, and this is the production one where we have the child theme installed. And you can see that we don't have the custom post type or custom taxonomy registered in here yet. To do that, we go over to VS Code and we look inside of our child theme file. We're going to open up functions.php, and that code that we copied from WP Turbo, we're just going to paste it right in here. And once I save this and switch back to WordPress, we can refresh and you can see that employee shows up. Now I've already pre-populated this with some employee data. So let's come in here to all employees and you can see I've got my employees listed. But now we also want to show the departments for each of these employees. So just like our post type has categories as a taxonomy, we can create a taxonomy for departments inside of employees. So we'll come back to WP Turbo and we'll go to generators, taxonomy generator. And a lot of this is going to be similar to what we did with the custom post type. So for the function name, we're just going to change that to BTFS child, register departments, text domain, BTFS child. The taxonomy is going to be departments. The singular name is department and the plural name is departments. I don't want to make these hierarchical. Here's where we can say what post type is going to be linked to this. And we're going to make that our employees post type. It's automatically created our labels for us. We don't really want to do anything with visibility. Don't need to change anything for query, permalinks, capabilities, REST API, or miscellaneous. Although here, if you do come to miscellaneous, we're going to see that this field is supposedly required. Now, while the function will work just fine without it in here, we really should put in a function called update generic term count. And back to the WordPress handbook, when we look at this, what this is going to do is it's going to update the term count that we see when we click on that taxonomy. So for example, if we come over to posts and categories, we can see the count in here. There's some instances inside of WordPress where if we don't put that callback function in, this won't work correctly. So just to be safe, we can add this in here. And this is one of the bummers of the taxonomy generator from WP Turbo is that it doesn't do it automatically. Some of the other ones will put that in there for you automatically and you don't need to worry about it. But now that we've got all that done, we can copy it to our clipboard, come back over to VS Code, give it a few lines, paste that right in there, save it up, switch back to WordPress. And when we reload the page, you can now see under employees, we have departments. And again, I preloaded some data and we've got finance, HR, marketing, operations, and productions departments. You can see that we've got counts in there. And let's see, production. Look, Richie and Eric Clapton are in there. And if we look at our employees, we can now see that the employee name, the department, and the published date. So that was all pretty easy. The hardest part is really just understanding what information needs to go inside of these things. And for that, it's just a matter of doing it once or twice, looking over the instructions, and you'll get a feeling for it. Now let's take a look at how we do this using different plugins. I'm going to come back to VS Code and we're just going to remove all of this and save it so that we no longer have our custom post type or our taxonomy inside of WordPress. And I'm just going to put this into a blank text file so that I save it for later, because now we're going to install and enable our CPT UI plugin. And that's going to add a CPT UI icon in the sidebar. Here we can come in and say add edit post types. And if we scroll down and look at this, it's a lot of the same type of fields that we have in each of the generators. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to do employees, and it's going to say that the slug already exists because I've already used it and I've got data saved in as an employee slug, but that's not a big deal. Our plural label is going to be employees, singular, employee. We can say populate labels for us automatically. Now it's gone through and it's created all of these for me. And we still need to know whether we want to set any of these things to true or false. It's got some pretty good defaults, but you may want to change them for different things. I'm going to leave them all alone though, and just say add post type. And you can see it's just created the post type for me right there. And one of the nice things about CPT UI is that we can come in here and say edit post types. And this will let us go through and change any of this information. So for example, if I didn't want this to say employees, if I wanted this to say my employees, I can just make that change and it updates. If I want to view all the post types on the website, I can say view post types and it gives me all the information there. And then I can come over to tools and I can export the settings or I can export the code. So just like we could with the generators, we can hit the get code button and we can export that code. Working with taxonomies is almost the same thing. We've got very similar fields again. I'm not going to walk through it because it's all pretty much the same. Let's go ahead and deactivate this plugin. And I'll just walk through the interface with ACF. So we will activate advanced custom fields. You can see over here, employees is gone. Let's activate that. And now inside of ACF, I've already got some employee fields created. You can ignore those. Those are just from information that I had imported before. What we really care about is our post types. And let's create that right here. So we'll add a new post type. And the plural label is going to be employees. Singular is employee. Employees is going to be the post type key. It wants to do it as singular, but I want it to be plural. And for taxonomies here, because we haven't registered the taxonomy of department yet, we don't see it in the dropdown and we can't type it in either. So it needs to be a two-step process where we'll create the custom post type, create the taxonomy, then come back and link them together. Let's go back and just take a look at some more of these settings here. So we've got our taxonomies. Public, we don't want it to be hierarchical, and then advanced configuration, we can click this and get a lot of those settings that we had to do before with CPT UI and with the generators. So title, editor, feature image, those are the things that I want. Labels, it's already pre-populated these for me, and if I want to change them, I can. Visibility, I can change this if I want to. Same thing with URLs, permissions, REST API. Once I'm done, I can say save changes, and it's created employees for me. You can see though, it did not create the taxonomy. So let's do the taxonomy real quick. Departments, department, and the key is going to be departments. And for post types, now that we've got the post type created, we can do employees there, save the changes, and you can see that we have departments here under employees now. But what I really want to do is come back to post types and edit that employees, and now select the department taxonomy and save those changes. Now, this is where a lot of people would generally stop, is they would create it in the plugin and leave it as is. But of course, we know that anything that we've done inside this plugin only lives on this particular website, and it's not going to move around with us in the child theme. So let's go ahead and export this, and we will plug this into the child theme code. For that, we come over to tools, and I want to take my post types and taxonomies, and I want to generate PHP. That's given us the code that I can now copy and paste right here into VS Code, so that when I come back here, everything's good. And now if I want to, I can take these post types and delete them. Now that we've created our custom post type for employees and our custom taxonomy for departments, we need to be able to display this on the website. As you can see, I made a few modifications to the theme just to give it a little bit more polish and to add a custom menu in here. But let's go ahead and we're actually going to come back to the dashboard and let's take a look at one of the employees, and we will take a look at Mark. Now, if we say view here, we're going to see that this opens up in the generic post template. So we have like the previous button and the next button, author and date. This probably isn't what we want. If we try to go to the archive for employees, you're going to see that we have a 404 page not found. Same thing if we hit this icon here in the menu, 404 page not found. Let's take care of this one first. Because we've added a new taxonomy and a new custom post type, we need to flush the permalinks. So to do that, we just come to settings, permalinks. We don't need to make any changes at all. But now when we come back to the website and hit employees, you can see that it just works. It's one of those annoying quirks where if you don't know what's going on, again, you're going to think something's broken. But who would ever think that just going to a page inside of WordPress would flush the permalinks and allow that to work? Anyway, it does. But we still have the problem that this isn't really showing all the information that we want, and each of the employees isn't showing the information that we want. So we want to come back into the site editor and create new templates for the new custom post type and a new archive template for our employees post type. And we'll come back to our templates and add a new one. And here inside the Add Templates dialog, you'll already see that we can create a new single item employees post type template. So let's click on single item employee, and I want this to be for all employees. Oh, and look at that. It's already selected this for me. So I can choose to use the pattern that I had for the standard post type. And we don't want author. We don't want date. Categories, we actually want this to be departments, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And then tags, we don't want tags. And we certainly don't want our previous and next buttons at the bottom. So we'll come in here and let's first remove our previous and next buttons. And then we've title, we're going to leave that. And for our stack, we don't want the author row. We don't care about the date row. I don't want tags. And categories, unfortunately, the block that we have here inside of WordPress doesn't let us change the category. So I can't change this to departments, and we're kind of stuck here unless we were to extend this block or create our own custom block. We're not going to do either of those things right now either. So unfortunately, I'm going to just remove categories. I'm going to leave the stack where it is because later on we will create a custom block that shows us what we want. So let's get rid of that. And now we just have an empty place there, and you know what? I don't like the way that looks either. So let's just remove the stack and we'll leave it as is, that we just have title and the content. It looks an awful lot like our page template, and I'm okay with that. So we've got that, and let's go ahead and view site. And now when we look at employees and open up one of those guys, we've got our employee, we've got the title, we have the information there. I do want to put in a image though. So let's do that. We'll edit this guy. And right under row, we'll add another block for image, and we'll add our featured image. And we're just going to do another row. This is what I get for trying to work on the fly. All right, so we've got a row for our title, a row for our featured image, wide width, and now we can save that. And let's take a look at our employees again. Open up Mark. There we go. So now we've got Mark, we've got his featured image, his bio, and that's that. It's not beautiful, but we're going to worry about making custom blocks to make this look a little bit better in the next video. Because the next thing that I'm going to work on is an archive template for the employees archive. So let's close some of these other tabs here, and we'll say edit site. And here you can see we have all archives. We will come back to our templates and create a new archive. And it already knows that we have a new post type called employees and an archive for that. So let's just click on that, archive employee. We'll choose the pattern that we used for our all archives template. And if we open up the sidebar, we can see that everything looks pretty similar. Now, one of the things that I might want to do in here is I might want to add departments. But if you remember correctly, we used a template part for this query loop. So that's not going to really work because if we modify this, it's going to modify it for all of the templates that use this part. So even though it's going to take a little bit more maintenance if we ever need to change the query loops, we can always do that here by coming in and saying detach from block template part. So now it is no longer a template part, and any changes that we make on this archive template to this query loop are not going to be reflected anywhere else where we've used that query loop template part. So now we can come in here and say title, excerpt, and I really want a category in here for the departments. But again, because our category block does not let us change what we're looking for, all I can do is add in a paragraph block. And we're going to say departments need to add, because this is something that we will have to fix later on, either when we extend the block or we can create a new custom block to handle it for us. So we've updated the site. Come back and view it. And first we'll take a look at our articles, and you can see this looks exactly the same as it did before. And we'll look at employees, and you can see that it's using the new employee template. So that just about covers it for us. We've talked about what custom post types are, what custom taxonomies are for, how to create them, lots of different ways to create them, and we've even created a new template for our custom post type and a new template for the employees archive. In the next video, which is going to be the last video of this series, we're going to look at creating custom blocks and using third-party blocks inside of our block theme. So as always, thank you so much for sticking with me, and I will see you in the next video.